No, not at all. I mean, to be honest, I grew up in Belfast, so no bands came to Belfast. And then that was 1981, I was 14. So the idea of seeing any band was amazing. The Stones then were my favourite band in the world. So the idea of just going to see them was incredible. So the idea for me as a 14-year-old boy to be standing watching them was sort of amazing in itself. To think that years later I would have them sitting for portraits for me was, well, yeah, I wouldn't have believed it. Well, they're all quite different. They're all delightful, but they're all quite different. Ronnie's just a really decent guy. He's sort of a very cool guy, and he just sort of wants to know what you want. And I mean, I think the thing that makes it easier for somebody that does what I do is they still look incredibly cool. They look annoyingly cool. You know, there's this sort of endless conversation about Mick Jagger, the whole Peter Pan thing. But in actual fact, he looks amazing. Which makes my job very easy. So all you have to do is put a light on them and ask them to look in the camera, and if they can sit still long enough, which in Mick's case can be quite difficult, you're almost guaranteed a good picture. Well, they were shot on different days. The first day that we shot was actually the first day of shooting the film Stones in Exile. And it was shot in Stargroves, which is the house that Mick had bought and lived in before. And they didn't know what it was going to be called. It was the album that became Exile on Main Street, but they were just recording the album. And for Charlie in particular, Charlie turned up first. And the amazing thing was that he hadn't been back to the house since. So whenever they all left England and they went to live in the south of France and then sort of dispersed wherever to work out how they were going to earn enough money to pay their tax bill. So wandering around the house with Charlie, we hadn't made decisions about what we were going to shoot or not shoot. So whenever Charlie turned up, we're just wandering about the house. And he was just fascinated. And he was fascinated to see the house because the house now belonged to this old couple who live there now. And they're sort of quite grand and whatever. And he was just sort of going, yeah, I think I had my drum kit there. And then he was talking about, and Charlie jokes about being a member of the Rolling Stones as his job. He talks about, going to work, and even when they were in the south of France, he lived in the farm I think it was about 100 miles away, and he would come down on a Sunday night, work all week, and then go home to his wife at the weekend. And he sort of treated Stargroves the same. He would come down on a Monday, work all week on the album, and then go home at the weekend. And he was wondering, and he said, "There's two things I remember really well." And he said, because if you imagine they were in their mid-20s, loads of money, no money, but they were just young rock and rollers. And Charlie was saying there was no furniture and there was never anything to eat because there was this huge country mansion in the middle of nowhere, and they just went down there to record the album. And, people came and went and sort of all that stuff. But it's sort of hard for us to imagine now, thinking about who they are and sort of the lifestyles I imagine they live now. But of them sort of rambling around this sort of beautiful mansion, but having bought the place, having overlooked to buy any furniture, and not really having anybody to buy any food, but they still managed to get it together to record the album. In theory, no. In actuality, yes, of course you do. It's sort of nice to think that you treat everybody the same, but you sort of, on a practical level, you don't treat celebrities like they're more special. They just require more attention. They require Well, actually, if it was sort of regular people, then you can go, oh yeah, let's take a break, I'm going to have a cup of tea or whatever. You can't really do that with these kind of people. And that's primarily because they have limited time, and very often they have a limited attention span, and they expect, whenever they find themselves in that situation, they want the job done, and they want it done quickly, efficiently, and professionally, and it's got to be right. It's got to be right the first time. So within those tiny parameters, you do treat them the same, but those parameters do make things slightly different. I always prefer to shoot in location. Primarily, it's sort of in many respects it's the lazy way to shoot, because if you shoot in somebody's home then they're surrounded by stuff that says something about them, so you can look for it. Whereas if you're in a studio and you have a white wall, then it's quite stark and it's quite hard for you to sort of get something. It doesn't make it harder to get something out of them. It makes it slightly harder to take a picture that says something about them. So I find student on occasion easier, and very often I think the outcome's nicer. I think it works better. Being from Belfast, I met him a few times, but the only person I didn't photograph that I'd really love to photograph is George Best, who even in his most damaged years, I would like to have photographed him, but it never happened. Again, it's really hard. I think there's a lot of pressure on students now to learn. It's all very technical. Everything's very technical. I think if you can get, in terms of what I do, it's not about, the technical stuff's sort of irrelevant. You can just learn it. I could teach somebody everything I know in a day, technically. It's not how they respond to the camera, and it's not how they respond to me. It's how they respond to the atmosphere in the room, and you're in control of the atmosphere in the room, but you don't want anybody to know that. And it's sort of creating that atmosphere that feels like, oh yeah, we're just hanging out and whatever, and it's all very nice and easy. Whereas of course it's not, because you're overthinking every single tiny aspect of everything that's going on. But I would concentrate more on that, because the learned stuff can be learned. The technical stuff and it's actually become easier. And I think because it's become easier, there's almost too many people doing it. Whereas that thing whereby somebody looks, if you open a magazine and you see a portrait of somebody and that person looks at you, even though your brain knows they're looking at a piece of paper, if that person doesn't look at you like they're looking at you, if they look like they're looking at a camera, your brain makes a million tiny subliminal decisions about that person that, unless they're connecting with you, it's not good. So you're constantly, even whenever you meet, you're just wriggling your way into that thing, and you know when you've got it, and actually they know when they've got it too. So that's sort of what you're after. So in terms of the technical stuff, learn it quickly, get over it, and just concentrate on that last few percent.